I'm the best beta assistant an alpha boss could ask for. On the one hand, I handle his work and manage his life. On the other, I can pin him down during his rut and jab him with a suppressor. I'm calm, collected, and ruthlessly efficient. Basically, the perfect psychic straight out of a romance novel. But at the end of the year, I handed him my resignation letter. He signed his name without a second glance. On New Year's Eve, he started pounding on my door like a madman. The moment I opened it, an alpha lunged, sinking his teeth savagely into the back of my neck. Frank, I knew I had to mark you to keep you from running off. Even though I couldn't smell their explosive pheromones, I could feel the intense battle of wills raging inside the room. The Omega was whimpering, a picture of false resistance. Howard was at his limit, eyes bloodshot and veins bulging. When his lust-filled eyes landed on me, a flicker of confusion crossed his face. I grabbed Howard by the hair and slammed his head against the wall. I pinned him with my knee between his legs, holding him down with one hand while I plunged the suppressor into his thigh with the other. The drug hit him fast. With a muffled groan, Howard passed out from the pain. He slumped heavily into my arms. With the alpha dealt with, only the trembling Omega remained. Sorry about this, I said, advancing on him. He was powerless to stop me as I easily injected him with a suppressor as well. I called a car to take Howard away, but I stayed by the Omega's bedside until he woke up. Nothing happened to you while you were unconscious. Here's the video evidence. I handed him a phone and a paper contract. Also, please read the contents of this carefully. I hope we can reach an agreement. I transferred a sum of money to the Omega, charging it to Howard's account. This wasn't the first time I'd had to clean up one of his messes. In my 5 years as Howard's assistant, I'd lost count of how many people I'd strong-armed and bribed into signing NDAs. He was young, handsome, and rich, and I'd heard his pheromones had an exceptionally rare, cool scent. He was a natural magnet for Omegas in heat. Even some betas, who should have known better, tried to climb into his bed. Howard was like a walking aphrodisiac. Everyone wanted a piece of him. The first time I met Howard, an Omega had pulled him into a rut right on the street. At the time, no one else dared to get near a top-tier alpha who'd lost control. I borrowed a suppressor from a nearby alpha, rushed in, and tackled him from behind. Howard's mouth, which had been aiming for the Omega's scent gland, clamped down on my arm instead. I winced in pain, punched him unconscious, and then gave him the shot. The kid I'd just saved wasn't exactly grateful. The Omega slapped me, humiliated and furious. Why couldn't you mind your own business? After that incident, Howard hired me, fresh out of college with an engineering degree, as his personal assistant at a huge salary. I knew nothing about administrative work, but I was strong and resourceful, which Howard found very satisfactory. 5 years have passed. Now I can handle any assistant task perfectly. I'm also his personal bodyguard and private caretaker. I manage his work and his life flawlessly without a single mistake. Even I can't help but wonder, if I left, how would he ever manage without me? And yet, I want to quit. Howard's parents were getting anxious about him settling down. Before the year was out, they had already arranged several blind dates for him. Howard wanted me to handle this too. He had someone formulate perfumes based on the Omega's pheromones and made me smell each one. Whichever one I liked, he'd go meet. I honestly think he's insane. I didn't actually mind the pleasant scents, but thinking about their source made my stomach turn. Even so, I completed my task with a blank face and forced myself to choose one with a cool, clean scent. Howard asked me, "You like this one?" "It's a very clean scent," I commented. The corner of his lips curled up. "I like it too." When Howard went on the date, he insisted on booking me a separate table next to them, making me part of the whole twisted play. I refused at first. It was too awkward. For one, I had to consider the feelings of his date. For another, it would be hard to explain to Howard's parents. But Howard just said, "I've got your back. What are you afraid of?" He always said that whenever he forced me to do something out of line. And I always gave in. She was a beautiful female Omega with a rebellious glint in her eyes. Sitting there, she and Howard looked like two alphas sizing each other up. She got straight to the point. I can't stand that alpha male attitude, and my tastes aren't exactly mainstream. I have to be the one in charge during intimacy. Can you accept that? Howard, a fresh bruise on his head, was just as blunt. No. Ha. Well, that makes things simple, the Omega chuckled. I won't be having this meal with you. I have to get back to my wife. As she left, she patted Howard's shoulder. An AB couple. You've got guts just like me. Good luck to you both. On the outside, I was a picture of calm, but inside, I was screaming. She thought Howard and I were a couple. The nerve. Whether we liked it or not, some rumors had already spread. Howard was known as a walking pheromone bomb, with the sex appeal of an incubus, yet he was still single with a romantic history as blank as a fresh sheet of paper. It just didn't seem right. As the person closest to him, I was the first one to take the hit. People speculated that I wasn't just his assistant but his secret beta boyfriend. The story went that we couldn't go public because Howard's parents were too traditional and would only accept a mainstream alpha-omega match. The rumors were a mix of fact and fiction. The true part was that his parents didn't really approve of betas. After Howard's next blind date turned out to be another omega who was already taken, I started to wonder if my nose was broken, if I had a talent for picking out unavailable people. That's when his parents finally couldn't take it anymore. We're not old-fashioned people, but we really can't accept an alternative preference. I could see how difficult this was for them, so I dutifully said what they wanted to hear. I understand. I won't be by Mr. Vance's side for much longer. I'll be resigning in a few days. Only then did a genuine smile appear on their faces. Howard returned from the restroom and sat down next to me as if it were the most natural thing in the world. He placed a piece of fish in my bowl and said, "It's not as good as yours." A nasty flu was going around at the end of the year, and unfortunately, I caught it. Today was a special day, so I had to go to the office, even with a high fever and a mask. Howard was unusually focused on his work, staring at his computer the whole time, completely oblivious to my condition. I placed my resignation letter in front of him. He signed his name at the bottom without even looking at it. My voice was thick and nasal. "Aren't you going to take another look at what you just signed?" "No need," Howard said. "I trust any contract that passes through your hands. 100% trust." I was speechless and, at the same time, a little heartbroken. My hand tightened on the resignation letter. For a moment, an inappropriate thought crossed my mind. Maybe I shouldn't leave. Staying by his side wouldn't be so bad. The pay is great, the benefits are good. It's just the boss who's a handful. Then, flashes of bad memories shot through my mind. The sound of tearing fabric, the sharp pain of a bite, the salt of tears and sweat, and those eyes completely controlled by desire. That was enough to erase any thought of staying. "Frank, are you going home for the holidays? If not, do you want to come spend them at my place?" Last year, I didn't go home and neither did Howard. I spent over a week at his house as his private caretaker, cooking 3 meals a day and coaxing him to take his medicine during his rut. One day, he secretly spat out his pills and snuck into my room while I was asleep. I fought for my life, leaving his shoulders covered in bite marks. The next morning, Howard had forgotten everything. He asked me if a burglar had broken in and beaten him up. Furious, I left him a resignation letter and was gone for 3 months. He used every means at his disposal to find me and get me to come back. He wasn't above playing the victim, telling me himself, "My life is a mess without you." I caved and went back to him. After that, no matter how much Howard resisted, I gave him a shot of the most painful but effective suppressor every time his rut began. I answered his question honestly. "I'll most likely be going home for the holidays this year." Howard asked, "So when will you be back?" I answered just as honestly, "I'm not coming back." Howard's lips curved into a smile. "Wow, our Frank is learning to joke. Get back to the office soon. How about I take you on a company-paid vacation when you return?" I neither refused nor agreed. My colleague in HR was shocked to see I was leaving. She looked through my file. "Frank, if you leave, what will Mr. Vance do? Can he even manage on his own?" I shook my head. "That's not my problem." The colleague asked cautiously, "Then, Frank, can I ask you one more thing? Why are you resigning? I was silent for a long moment. I've made enough money. And I never wanted to see Howard Vance's face again for the rest of my life. At work, I was the calm and reliable Frank. After resigning, I became Frank, the guy who could lie in bed all day scrolling through mindless videos. My parents called, asking me again and again if I'd bought my ticket home for the holidays. Then they steered the conversation toward my alpha brother. Tyler found a girlfriend. She's an Omega, and her family is pretty well off. She said she's coming to our place for the holidays. You know, we can't show up empty-handed, can we? As an alpha born into a beta family, Tyler had been showered with all their affection. After bleeding our parents dry, he'd started hitting up his high-earning beta brother, me. I knew what they were getting at and transferred them a sum of money. Once they got the money, they started asking about me. When they heard I had the flu, there was a pause on the line, followed by words that chilled me to the bone. Sweetheart, maybe you should come home a little later for the holidays? We wouldn't want you to infect anyone. After hanging up, I canceled my plane ticket. With that money, I could at least add a couple more dishes to my own New Year's Eve dinner. But on New Year's Eve, not only did I miss out on dinner, but my fever was still raging. I'd gone to the hospital for an 4 drip a couple of days ago, and my condition had stabilized. But as soon as the antibiotics wore off, the virus mounted a comeback. Outside, firecrackers were popping off everywhere. I turned the New Year's Eve show down to a whisper, curled up in my blankets, and tried to sleep. A loud thudding sound shattered the peace. I suddenly realized it wasn't fireworks. It was someone knocking on my door. The moment I opened it, an alpha lunged, sinking his teeth savagely into the back of my neck. Frank, I knew I had to mark you to keep you from running off. It was Howard, who I hadn't seen in days, whose every contact I had blocked. Quit? Block me? Howard seethed, punishingly nipping and scraping the skin of my neck with his teeth. When are you going to stop this habit of leaving without a word? Can't you just talk to me? His cold hand slipped under my shirt, touching my waist. The shock of the cold made me gasp. Why are you so hot? Are you in heat? I was dizzy and speechless. Did he even remember I was a beta? What gland did I have for him to mark? What heat was I supposed to be in? Let go. I tried to push him away, but my weak struggles and nasal voice sounded more like playful, flirty resistance. Howard swept me up into his arms, and only then did I realize something was wrong with him. 2. His hands were ice cold, but his body was burning up. His breathing was heavier than usual. These were all signs he was going into rut. What are you doing? Marking you for good. I asked, trembling. Who am I? Howard tossed me onto the bed and looked down at me. Frank, my disobedient assistant. My pupils contracted. This time he was lucid. It wasn't just instinct driving him. He pulled off his belt and whipped it across my exposed waist. Seeing me flinch in pain, Howard showed a satisfied expression. Then he used the belt to tightly bind my wrists. I used all my strength to warn him, Howard, you're going to regret this. Oh? Howard's voice was soft, but his words sent a chill down my spine. By that logic, how many times should I have regretted it by now? He knew. He knew everything. The shock of this revelation drained all the fight out of me. I began to tremble, unsure if it was from the fever or the terror of the truth being exposed. My body was so hot that Howard's kisses felt cool against my skin. His voice was so cruel. Frank, I don't know what you're holding out for. You've had countless chances to refuse me, but you never have. Don't say it. I gently nudged him with my knee, which only made him press harder. His fingertips traced the inside of my thigh. Still want to pretend? Pretend you don't care that I went on those dates? Pretend you feel nothing for me? Howard chuckled softly. How could you possibly forget those nights? The ones where you opened the door for me yourself. Nights woven from fear and anticipation. Nights where I let desire reduce me to an object. Where love became an instrument of torture that stripped away all reason. I had the right to say no, to fight him tooth and nail, but I chose to accept, to tolerate everything about him. So now this was my punishment for that indulgence. Tears slid down my face, leaving two cooling, wet tracks. I struggled to catch my breath. Not today. I'm sick. You'll get sick too. The ER on New Year's Eve wasn't much quieter than any other day. Howard helped me onto the hospital bed, carefully protecting the hand with the 4-drip. I was so exhausted I could barely keep my eyes open, but I still remembered to worry about him. You can't have caffeine or alcohol for 24 hours after taking the meds, so don't. I know. Howard leaned down and tucked the blanket around me. He pulled over a chair and placed his palm on my forehead. Get some sleep. I'll handle everything else. I couldn't ignore him sitting right there beside me. I gave in to my sick body and drifted off. A little while later, I asked him, "Can you put on the New Year's Eve show? I want to hear some noise." Okay. Howard pulled out his phone and played the broadcast for me. My right hand with the 4 was cold. A warm hand covered it. My eyelashes fluttered, but I didn't open my eyes. As the countdown to midnight ended, fireworks exploded. Howard whispered, "Happy New Year." I slept deeply that night. I even had a restless dream. I dreamed that Howard was looking at me with the same cold, indifferent expression he gave his pursuers. "Frank, how could you develop feelings like that? To me, you're worthless now." The shock woke me up. The 4-drip was gone, and the chair beside me was empty. It should have been this way from the start. I should have come to the ER alone, taken care of myself. Last night was just a moment of uncharacteristic kindness from Howard. I closed my eyes. When I opened them again, I saw Howard. "You're awake?" He had come in so quietly I hadn't heard his footsteps. The digital thermometer beeped. Howard let out a sigh of relief. The fever finally broke. "Need the bathroom first?" "I bought some breakfast. Want to eat?" I remained silent. Howard pressed the back of his hand to my forehead. "Still feeling sick?" "No." I grabbed his wrist and pushed his caring hand away. Then I said something I didn't mean. "I just think you should leave." My parents were both simple betas, and they taught me from a young age. Follow the path laid out for you. Don't make waves. So I voluntarily gave up my spot in a national competition to focus on college entrance exams. Meanwhile, my alpha brother got to chase his dream of attending a sports academy. When I got the job offer from Howard, they were both against it. Getting a high-paying job just for saving an alpha on the street? Impossible. "He must be into you," my dad said with certainty. "Some rich guys find omegas too much trouble, so they go for betas. You'd be better off graduating and getting a steady blue-collar job, preferably for the government." But they were also the ones. When my alpha brother complained that his beta parents couldn't give him the comfortable life his peers had, the designer clothes, the trips abroad, they pressured me. They were the reason I had to go back and beg Howard for another chance, promising I would work myself to the bone. 2 days before I started, I went home for dinner. The betas who raised me continued to drill their survival rules into my head. Don't stand out. Follow the rules. Do everything your alpha boss tells you. You need to understand, deep down, what your value is to your boss. I thought my value to Howard was a housekeeper who cooked well, a meticulous secretary, and most importantly, a walking, talking alpha suppressor, there to save him from unexpected desires and help him stay pure for his future Omega wife. And if I fell in love with him, that would be an inside job, a betrayal of my duty. While Howard was called home for a family meal, I checked myself out of the hospital. I shelled out a fortune for an emergency plane ticket. I wanted to get away from Howard. I didn't know where to go, and the first place that came to mind was home. I was waiting at the airport gate when Howard rushed up, pulling a roller bag. He took off his gloves, revealing his well-defined hands. He brushed his soft, dark hair back and touched my forehead. "Why did you check out without telling me?" I stared at him, confused, wondering how he'd found me here. He continued, "The flight's going to your hometown. Are you going home?" My mouth fell open. "How did you know?" Howard's tone was resigned. "You booked 2 tickets. I'd gotten so used to traveling with him that when my head wasn't clear, I'd subconsciously book tickets for both of us. I made a mistake, and you used my card. I'll transfer you the money. Howard sat down next to me. Don't worry about it. The flight was delayed, turning into a red eye. Being sick, I couldn't last the night. When I opened my eyes again, I was waking up in Howard's arms. Time to board. His expensive coat was draped over me, carrying that faint, cool scent. The strange sense of comfort it gave me was terrifying. Even after we landed, I still couldn't make sense of the situation. Because I'd booked the wrong tickets, Howard had followed me back to my hometown, and I was supposed to be running away from him. I searched for attractions in the city on my phone. All of them, without exception, were closed for the holidays. Howard saw right through me. He grabbed my wrist with a grip I couldn't break. I'm coming home with you, as my boyfriend. I couldn't think of any other way to explain to my family, hey everyone, look, this is my boss. He decided not to spend the holidays with his own family and came to ours instead. Before coming in, Howard had bought so many gifts he couldn't carry them all. I tried to help him with some. Instead, he scanned a QR code on the spot, bought a hand warmer, and shoved it into my hands. You hold this. So I followed behind him, clutching the warm pack. Once we were inside, Howard opened his suitcase. It was filled with even more expensive gifts, worth at least tens of thousands of dollars. I wasn't sure what your parents would like, so I just brought a few small things as a token of my esteem. My family's living room was so cluttered with things Howard had bought there was barely anywhere to stand. Not only were my parents' eyes wide, but my brother's Omega girlfriend was also showing a keen interest in Howard. The Omega gave Howard a shy look. Your brother's boyfriend is so rich. At those words, the expressions on my parents' and brother's faces shifted. My brother is the luckiest beta I've ever seen, he said, turning his fire on me. To land such a high-quality alpha even after an abortion. I stared at my mother in disbelief. She was the only one who knew that secret. Her eyes darted away, unable to meet my gaze. Howard wrapped an arm around my waist, gently patting my back as I stood there, frozen stiff. Yes, it was my fault. I didn't take precautions and he got pregnant at the wrong time. Howard, his hair still damp from the shower, cornered me. That familiar cool scent filled my nose. His gaze was intensely oppressive, his alpha dominance on full display. We need to talk about the pregnancy. In my memory, I was never inside you, so it's impossible for you to have. His tone grew colder on the last few words. Gotten pregnant with my child. So Howard didn't know. I lifted my head and looked him straight in the eye. In your memory, when was the first time we were together like that? Howard narrowed his eyes. After the first time you left without a word. When you came back. I was so angry, and you didn't say no. The first time in my memory was much, much earlier than that. It was the start of an X-rated film that drew blood. I fought back at first, but slowly, my resistance crumbled. What was that saying again? Know your duty. If the boss says east, you don't dare go west. My primary duty was to be Howard's human suppressor. To soothe him in his heat, by any means necessary. The moment I stopped fighting him, Howard lost all reason, and his suppressed desire ignited in an instant. After it was over, I didn't think about leaving at first. As I washed myself, I replayed the tender, lingering kisses Howard had given me during the storm. I had tasted love, even if I didn't know what love was supposed to be like. Porridge bubbled in the creamy white ceramic pot. Bacon sizzled in the pan. Exhausted from the night and weighed down by my thoughts, I'd made a bizarre fusion of Chinese and Western breakfast. Howard got up and dressed. Under my hopeful and fearful gaze, Howard told me the first and cruelest joke of my life. Did a burglar break in last night? He rolled up his sleeves, revealing scratch marks on his muscular forearm. Feels like someone beat me up. My heart, along with the truth I was about to confess, sank to the bottom. It wasn't love. It was just desire, born from a moment of madness. Seeing my silence, Howard's eyes grew even colder. He gripped my chin. So whose bastard was it? Do you need me to help you get legal aid? I was just about to speak. But the door was suddenly thrown open. An Omega in heat, clothes disheveled, stumbled in. Help me. I feel so awful. Please, Help me. My brother followed, sweating profusely, wearing even less clothing. Fortunately, Howard had already taken his meds and still had some self-control. But he asked for another shot of suppressor. He gasped for air. This omega, something's not right. Of course it wasn't right. This omega's pheromone compatibility with him was 98%. A number just shy of breaking a world record. Which meant that fate had guided Howard to my family's home to meet his destined omega partner. Howard's parents were, of course, overjoyed. They even sent me a bonus. Howard's mom spoke to me with grave sincerity. It's all thanks to you, for staying by his side and keeping him from making the same mistake his father did. The mistake was being pulled into a rut by another omega and having a bastard child. That child had once caused chaos for the Vance family, which was why Howard was so celibate and careful. He didn't want to repeat his father's mistake. And he hadn't, because I'd had the abortion, clearing the obstacle for him ahead of time. I couldn't even manage a smile. The omega was happy, too. He could finally marry into wealth instead of spending his life with an alpha from a beta family. My brother flew into a rage. He became hysterical, threatening to kill himself. He hated us, hated this family. What if I had been a rich alpha? How could Ming Ming not have stayed with me? My parents, however, turned their blame on me. You're worse than useless. You made our family lose everything. I calmly blew my nose. From the outside, I looked like a complete bystander, unaffected by the whole affair. Are you done? If you're done, I'm leaving. I see you've really grown some wings. My dad roared. I could tell you were getting defiant these past few years. I should have beaten you more when you were a kid. Thinking back on the 5 years I'd been with Howard, they were indeed the years I'd defied them the most. Maybe it was because I'd heard Howard say things like, "I'll always have your back," too many times. But now he'd been dragged back to discuss marriage, and we might never see each other again. My support system was gone. I could only rely on myself now. I guess so, I nodded. But it's no use now, old man. You can't win a fight against me anymore. And all his life lessons about being a beta were bullshit. They only made my life harder. The only times I ever got anything good were when I fought back. My relationship with my family was now at the point of no return. I gave up the lease on my old apartment, planning to take the money Howard had given me and go live a carefree life in another city for a while. I heard that the Omega was forced into a senior assistant role at Howard's company by his family and had already caused a lot of trouble. My old colleague called me to complain. "Frank, if only you were still here," she wailed. I looked down and texted back a half-hearted smiley face. Chocolate-flavored, right? A beautiful female Omega brought me a slice of cake. "Look at the plating. Isn't it pretty?" I examined it and gave an affirmative reply. "It's great. Your decorating skills have improved again." She blushed slightly. The Omega was my next-door neighbor, a novice baker, and the first person to show me kindness in this strange new city. I knew she had a crush on me, but I also knew nothing would ever come of it. Even if she accepted my past and the truth that I had once carried a child. I didn't want to hold her back. "Do you want to smell my pheromones?" The Omega handed me a small perfume sample. I didn't understand why, but I complied. The sweet scent was almost cloying. I didn't dislike it. I thought the fragrance suited her identity as a baker perfectly. "This is custom made and really expensive. I saved up for a long time. So smells good, right?" she asked, her eyes full of expectation. I nodded. "Your pheromones have a very interesting scent." She grinned and gave me the perfume sample to keep. I left her shop with a bag full of bread, enough to cover my meals for the next 2 days. Howard was standing at my door. I don't know how long he'd been there. I wasn't surprised to see him. I didn't even bother to give him a second glance. Howard sniffed the air. "What's that smell? An Omega?" Only then did I look at him. Judging gender by scent was a fascinating concept to a beta. Howard quickly jammed his hand in the door before I could close it. He asked, "Aren't you going to invite me in? I've been waiting a long time." I didn't stop him, but I didn't play host either. Howard's eyes were glued to the pheromone perfume on my coffee table. It seemed he recognized what it was. "Aren't you going to explain?" "No explanation. When did your tastes change? You like Omegas now?" His tone was accusatory. I still ignored him. Frank, I'm begging you. My hand, turning the crank on the coffee grinder, paused. This was the second time I had ever heard Howard speak like that. Howard stood behind me, wrapped his arms around me, and buried his head in the crook of my neck. Talk to me. Don't just say nothing. You know it wasn't my fault. I didn't have a choice. Howard's voice was trembling. I won't marry him. I only want you. I'll have my glands removed. I'll take drugs to make me insensitive to pheromones, whatever it takes. Can you just come back to me? I let out a soft laugh and asked him, why do you want me back? Because without me, there's no one to do your dirty work? No. Howard denied it flatly, holding me tighter. Because I'm used to you being here. Because I can't face losing you. Because I love you. He finally said the words I'd longed to hear, even if it was far too late. Howard, am I pathetic? I broke free from his embrace and turned to face him. Howard was confused. Why would you say that? Every time, I paused. As long as you back down, as long as you say something nice, I forget everything and come back to you like a dog. One word from Howard was all it took. It made me forget all the heartbreaking moments, allowing me to return to his side under the guise of duty and responsibility. And then I could continue to dream that one day he might love me back. He asked cautiously, so, is it the same this time? When I didn't answer, he leaned in to kiss me. I turned my head away. Don't kiss me. Then I sank my teeth into the spot on his neck where his scent gland was, with a force as if he were my mortal enemy. Howard pulled me into his arms to soothe me, tilting his head down to give me better access. I love you. I love you. It was so strange. He was the one in pain, yet he was speaking such blissful words. The taste of blood exploded on my tongue, mixing with his faint, cool scent as it rushed into my senses. Howard's kisses were restrained, terrified of doing anything to upset me. When his palm rested on my lower abdomen, a look of pain crossed his face. And then I knew. Howard knew everything. Howard casually tossed the perfume sample in the trash. I angrily fished it out. This was a gift from someone. He was strangely stubborn about this. I don't care. I can't stand looking at it. I'll pay her back however much it cost. Howard, I warned him. Howard pulled out a bottle of perfume, warmed by his body heat. The packaging was much fancier than the one the Omega had given me. You're only allowed to use this. Cool scent. He had no idea how long he'd had this custom pheromone perfume made, just so I could smell his scent. Only one person was unhappy about Frank's return to the company. Ryan. He had already been demoted from senior assistant to the role of a pretty decoration after making too many mistakes. With no progress in his relationship with Howard, and with the Vance family no longer pushing the matter, he was feeling desperate. So he chose a night when I wasn't there, when Howard was working late, and tried to force the issue in the office. Howard kicked the preening Omega into the washroom and then called me, sounding pitiful. I drove back at my usual, unhurried pace. By the time I arrived, Ryan had somehow managed to pick the lock. His face twisted when he saw me. Our pheromone compatibility is 98%. We're fated mates. We'll be together sooner or later. I suggest you, the beta, give up now. Howard grabbed my shirt and pulled me toward him. He sat in his chair, burying his face in my chest, trying to use my scent to calm his agitated desire. The result was that he only got more worked up. Get him out of here, or just watch. Baby, I want you right now. As Howard spoke, he started to unbutton my shirt. Ryan looked like he was about to have a breakdown. Howard, are you insane? I'm your Omega. Hold on. I leaned down and kissed Howard's forehead. Let me show him how I calm you down without a suppressor. It might hurt a little. It hurt a lot. In a flash, I grabbed Howard by the hair and slammed his head onto the desk. He was out cold. Ryan was stunned. He was still defiant. You can't always be by his side. That's not very likely. First of all, Howard has separation anxiety. I straightened my cuffs. And second, he would rather risk his life running red lights and speeding for hundreds of miles to find me than touch someone else right in front of him. Ryan was now in heat himself, and he was not having a good time. No, impossible. So, I offered him a polite, proper smile. You're next. On our wedding day, my family messaged me, playing the family card. I blocked them without a second thought. Most of the guests were colleagues from the office. Their reaction to me marrying Howard was, "We knew it." The CEO and his assistant were totally a thing. Howard had deliberately held back for 2 months, and it all exploded on this one day. My neck was covered in bite marks, but only one had drawn blood. That was when he couldn't control himself, trying to inject his pheromones into me. Breathing in Howard's reassuring scent, I closed my eyes, completely drained of energy. The next morning, I was woken by Howard's kisses. "Good morning, darling. Need some morning service?" I had no right to refuse.